In the history of video game adaptations, Captain N might just be the weirdest. For years, it was arguably the most extensive video game crossover. It had a ridiculous amount of license holders from all across the NES library involved. Everything about Captain N is so early 90s, and there's basically no other time something like Captain N could have been made. Especially because the trend with crossovers now is to make cinematic universes, with broader connections between multiple different IPs that you can't really get with Captain N. I think a Captain N cinematic universe would be a terrible idea for multiple reasons. There's expectations on how a Castlevania movie would have to function, and it's pretty incompatible with how a Mega Man movie would have to function. But you know what? Wouldn't it be fun if I planned one anyways? This video will be my pitch / loose idea for a Captain N cinematic universe, which from now on I will be referring to as the Captain NCU. This is a horrible idea that I am doing anyways, because it seems like a genuinely interesting challenge. I will be coming up with basic concepts for the first 3 movies, and if this video is a success, I'll finish the rest of phase 1 in a sequel. However, there is a catch. I don't think it would be fun to adapt this series as we know it now. There's too much baggage associated with each series and their license holders, and many of them have adaptations anyways. For my pitch, I'll be imagining that every series to ever get a release on the NES just didn't progress past 1991 when the original Captain N series ended. This is, admittedly, really weird. In this weird scenario, these are all still recognizable IPs, some of which got multiple games, but they all just mysteriously stopped around 1991. But I think it makes for more interesting pitches. In the 80s, video game stories were much more up to players' interpretations, and are easier to mold into a cinematic universe format. I still want to stay true to each game, and the strength of a cinematic universe is that you can play with different genres and tones with a through line that connects disparate movies and their characters. Keep in mind that you will probably hate the changes I make to each series. Many of the series represented in Captain N have cemented their looks and feel since 1991, but the material I'm pulling from is a different era where video game storylines were looser, and a lot of iconic elements might not have been introduced yet. I am going to be doing some 1993 Mario movie shit, and this is your warning. Maybe not as big of a change as that movie, but it still might be weird. I'm going to try to ask you to suspend your disbelief because this is a weird premise and will result in even weirder movies. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and bear with me for a minute as I set some rules. I'll get to my movie lineup shortly. I am only going to be adapting material in games originating from before 1991 that released on the NES. I can adapt or take elements from any publisher as long as it's not a licensed game and that it released on NES before that time. Even NES games that weren't in Captain N are fair game. I can also take some light inspiration from the various cartoon adaptations, including the Captain N show, but I won't be adapting them directly. I'm not including Japan exclusive games that came out on Famicom. If I cover Phase 2 eventually, I figure I can loosen some of these rules, maybe include some Game Boy content too, but for now, this is what I'm doing. So here's my Comic-Con panel movie lineup reveal. I'm only doing the first 3 movies today, but I'll give the rest of the phase just to give some context. Super Mario Bros., Castlevania, Mega Man, Kid Icarus, The Legend of Zelda, and Captain N, The Final Fantasy. The Captain N show had Simon Belmont from Castlevania, Pit from Kid Icarus, and Mega Man as their protagonists, so they'll be set up in their own movies. The other protagonists, Captain N and Lana, will be introduced before the big crossover too. You've probably noticed that I titled the last movie after Final Fantasy. I will not be saying any more besides that at this point. Mario and Zelda get their own movies because they're both pretty connected to Captain N. Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World both aired at the same time as Captain N. Granted, I'm not allowed to use Super Mario World content, but whatever. I won't be going over the casts or directors for each movie Because frankly, I don't know enough actors, and I would just embarrass myself naming a bunch of people who are in superhero movies. I would love to hear casting ideas though. If there's any more information on the Captain N CEU, I'll get to it when it becomes relevant. Let's talk about my first movie pitch, Super Mario Bros. Brooklyn, modern day. We are introduced to Kevin Mario, a high schooler playing basketball outside his school with a few friends. He checks his watch, then realizes how late it is. Shit, sorry, I gotta go. I can't miss dinner again tonight. He rushes home through the busy streets and enters a small house. His parents and uncle are all seated at a table eating lasagna. Mario, Luigi, and Pauline. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. So Kevin is eventually going to become Captain N, and here I have decided to make him the son of Mario. When you think about it, Mario would be seen as outdated if he came out today. He's an Italian plumber stereotype, which is weird for the face of a billion-dollar brand, and he's often conceptualized as being from New York. Are fat working-class Italians really still what the current generation thinks of when they imagine New York City? So this movie will carry a theme of generations being at odds with one another. Mario is stubborn, traditional, and sticks closely to his culture. We could say him and Luigi are Italian immigrants. Basically, they match the stereotypes of Italians in New York City circa 1985. Kevin would be more adjusted to the times. He represents modern conceptions of the average Gen Z New Yorker and would rather spend his time with friends than help his dad and uncle out with their silly plumbing. There's a dinner scene where we get the basics of each character. Ultimately, they all love each other, but Mario and Kevin don't see eye to eye right now. This is also where I admit that obviously these plans I'm making are very loose. I'm not making these into full scripts or anything, and if I was, I'd probably change a lot of the details. In the creation of a movie, you could call this the okay, here's what I'm thinking phase. Kevin goes to his room and we see a shot outside, in the Brooklyn streets, as a crab's claw slowly reaches out through a manhole. The central plot of the movie would be the Mario Bros working to stop an invasion of New York by an army of enemies from the games. Goombas, Koopas, Sidesteppers, Piranha Plants, etc. Kevin would help out, and it's through this process he begins to reconcile with his family, and Mario begins to see things from his point of view. The enemies themselves would absolutely have to be the star of the show. I want them to be done with practical effects, and it would basically be an homage to 1980s creature feature type movies through a modern lens. If I had to liken it to any movie tone-wise, I'd say Ghostbusters. It takes its threat seriously, but there's a lot of comedy. It's also set in New York City, and of course there'd be lots of fun scenes of monsters rampaging through the town. Bowser would be the main villain, and I'll get to him in a bit. The monsters would emerge from the ground, and Mario and Luigi, whose plumbing business isn't doing well, would pivot their business to basically be exterminators. They have extensive knowledge on the sewer systems of Brooklyn, so they're uniquely suited to fight them. There's so much potential in having the monsters running all over New York and just causing mayhem. Moving on, the next day would have an attack at Kevin's high school, Northridge High, from Sidesteppers. At this point in the story, I want there to be dread surrounding these enemies before we know their deal. Kevin and his friends would try to fight back, but would be forced to flee. Mario and Luigi have a plumbing job not too far off that day, and would eventually go to the school and defeat the crabs with their equipment. They'd be celebrated, but Kevin would be a little embarrassed. I want Kevin's friends to be important characters with a decent amount of screen time. We can understand Kevin's perspective better by having him interact with them, and it would endear him to us a bit better as a character. His friends would be named Rick, Stacy, Romeo, and Julius. Those are the names of the football team that appears in one episode of Captain N the Game Master. Those last two names are fan creations, so this can be a cute reference to that. I also just want to point out the fact that Stacy, despite appearing in one episode, has a weird amount of trivia for her on her wiki, which is kind of funny. It is unknown why Stacy joined 3 football players in the gym for football practice. Did she really just want to motivate them and had nothing else to do? I don't know, am I reading too much into this? Is that slut shaming? Or is it just saying she has nothing going on in her life? I don't know. Luigi would be the one to suggest shifting their business to exterminating monsters, and after some apprehension, Mario agrees. Luigi is the ideas guy. He's the one who makes their equipment for the plumbing business. I also want him to be a bit better at adapting to the times. It would be interesting to have him be more understanding of Kevin, but unable to really say the right thing since he's more nervous and anxious. Pauline would similarly be a good mother to Kevin and genuinely tries to cheer him up, but seemingly hides some secrets and sometimes seems distant. Mario and Luigi's plumbing and extermination business is successful at first, and they rake in a lot of money. Mario, now a bit richer, tries his best to connect with Kevin by treating him. He buys him a PlayStation 5, where you can now purchase Nintendo 50, the Anniversary Collection, for only $49.99. Kevin likes it and sees Mario trying to connect him, but the two still disagree on a lot of things. We get our first cutaway to Bowser. Bowser is the main antagonist of the film, and seems to live in a castle in some other dimension. He's frustrated that his minions don't seem to be making any headway in conquering this world. Bowser would basically be portrayed as a businessman. He wants as much land as possible, and sees Earth as another venue. There's a contrast drawn between him and the more working-class Mario Bros, but also a parallel. As the brothers become more business savvy, they start to become more like him in some ways. He's served by the 7 Mushroom Retainers, aka the Toads, but that's not what they were called in the Super Mario Bros. Manual. The Retainers would be scared of him and don't like him, but are clearly just working out of fear. They are small and squishy after all. Out of options, he sends more and more of his minions through a portal leading to Earth. Monsters appear through various pipes underneath the New York sewers. The warp zones, if you will. The Mario Brothers persevere, but their business faces hardships as the number of attacks raises. Plus, government regulations start to be enforced against them since they don't like 2 fat Italian fucks going through the sewers. Regardless, Kevin becomes more popular at school thanks to Mario and Luigi's reputation. New York getting attacked like this would be pretty big international news. Kevin would also start picking up some tricks to defeating enemies and use it to impress girls or something. In Act 1 and 2, Kevin dealing with high school life and the stress of having famous parents would weigh on him. Eventually, he would get enough confidence from becoming popular that he'd ask out Stacy on a date. His mom would prepare him, and as this happens, we cut away to Bowser, who is increasingly frustrated by his minions' attempt to take NYC. In case it wasn't clear, he's more of a comedy villain, the giant cigar-chomping turtle capitalist. His castle is located in a dark, destroyed kingdom, reminiscent of the Dark World from Super Mario Bros. 3. I always forgot I could use content from the other Super Mario Bros. Games. Frustrated, he yells, "Garland!" A knight in gray armor appears behind him. "Bowser," he calmly replies. This scene involves plot details the audience wouldn't fully know yet, so I'm gonna use some dialogue. "Earth isn't cooperating," Bowser says. "Not my problem," Garland replies. "Let me go there myself." Now that wasn't in our agreement. I give you 1 century to rule, and you stay away from that place. Chaos's power can't sustain itself if you're there for too long. 10 minutes. Just give me 10 minutes to see what's happening and kick someone's ass. 5. Yes, my acting is horrible, and I promise, I will explain, or at least give a little bit of context later. There will be a post-credit scene. Kevin's date goes well, but Stacy decides she wants to stay friends and isn't ready to date now. I'm not planning to have them ever get together, or the Captain N fandom would probably want him to get with Lana, and it makes sense to portray this as a case where people's relationships don't work out but can still be friends. It's important to portray that in media more often, and is better for his character arc now. Kevin is understandably disappointed but becomes frustrated because high schoolers are flawed people. The more pressing issue is that Bowser confronts Mario and Luigi who are in the sewers. Kevin had learned a little bit from his dad and uncle about how to defend himself from the monsters, so he recognizes they're being attacked in the sewers and rushes to their aid. Bowser beats them up with ease. He has magic, which allows him to breathe fire, and he attacks with hammers. Kevin takes a beating, but he distracts Bowser enough so that the 5 minutes are up. Frustrated, he leaves, and as Act 2 ends, he decides to send all of his minions to New York, every single one of them. At this low moment, Mario and Kevin would start to connect. Mario is protective of Kevin, and Kevin begins to see things more from Mario's point of view, even if conflict is still there, as New York kinda goes to shit. This is when Pauline gives a revelation. She's not from this world. Her real name is Pauline Toadstool. As a child, her kingdom was usurped by a demon named Bowser, who she recognized as the one attacking New York. She was told never to tell anyone about this by her parents, who were killed by Bowser. She managed to escape through a portal made by a sorcerer of her kingdom. Pauline believes that because of this, Kevin is special. He has the blood of a strange alternate world flowing through his veins. Luigi looks towards Mario, astonished, but Mario trusts that Pauline had a good reason for keeping this from him. He loves and trusts her no matter what, and knows that at this point he needs his family to be united. I will admit that the backstory for Pauline/Princess Toadstool is a bit clunky. If I was making an actual script, I would have fleshed that out more and hinted at it before. She's also obviously gonna have to get kidnapped in the third act, and I don't want her to just be a damsel in distress. She should have an important role in the plot. Planning complex female characters is hard, but I'm not actually making a script, and this is based on a game series that had like 4 female characters at the time, 2 of which I'm merging together. So that begins Act 3. And this is where all the fun set pieces of monsters rampaging through New York can be placed. Think something like the climax of Gremlins, but a little toned down. Eventually, Bowser would ignore Garland's warnings and head to Earth. Kevin is more prepared and fights him off, but Bowser uses his powers to become giant and takes Pauline, intending to take her back to his kingdom. With the help of the bros and eventually his friends, Kevin takes down the kaiju and reconciles with both Stacy and Mario, saving the day. Kevin raises his hand toward Bowser, and in some process we aren't clued into yet, it causes Bowser's magic powers to disappear, weakening him, and allowing the 7 retainers to effortlessly gain up on him and kick him out of the castle once he's back in Mushroom Kingdom and has no more minions. Kevin, his friends, Pauline, and the Mario Bros all celebrate together by going to the Mario household for a nice spaghetti dinner. Mario and Luigi go back to plumbing. They're more successful than ever, and Kevin even joins in to help from time to time. Mario and Luigi are seen as the heroes of New York City and get handed the key to the city by the mayor. So I guess Zora and Mamdani makes a cameo. That fits the themes of the movie, by invoking the old mayor gives the city to the key trope and what Gen Z is into, socialism. This film would be incomplete if Zora and Mamdani is not able to cameo is what I'm saying. So that is Super Mario Bros. The Captain NCU isn't like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because all these properties weren't originally meant to be combined. That's why I think it's important to connect each of these games through commonalities they share, or could be made to share in an adaptation. One of these commonalities is a theme, how we process our past. The whole conceit of this project is to revive silly Nintendo games that apparently haven't had new entries for 40 years, so it makes sense that the past could be a theme in all of these films. In Super Mario Bros., it takes the form of generations coming together and understanding one another, as well as Pauline, who had to spend years of her life burying her past, only for it to suddenly pop up. I would have called her Peach if that name wasn't exclusive to Japan back then. Later on, the theme of accepting the past and moving on to the future will come into play more and be taken to its natural conclusion with the last movie of the phase, Captain N the Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy has some time shenanigans after all. I wanted to introduce the theme with the first movie, and I think Mario is a good way of doing so. Out of all these movies, it's the one I think would be the most fun, and pretty suited to introduce the cinematic universe to the masses. Of course though, I'm not done with the movie. We have mid-credits and post-credits to get to. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. I know a lot of people are disillusioned by every movie having to have post-credit scenes now, but I'm doing it, it's fun, we're doing this. The mid-credit scene would have one of the 7 retainers pop up from a manhole cover. It's Blue Toad, referencing the Toad from Super Mario Bros. 2. Suddenly Pauline recognizes him and leaves the house running towards him. Toad? The two hug, with Toad having a cute, squishable body and all that. Why are you here? She asks. You know what? I wonder what Toad's voice would sound like if he didn't already have his iconic gravelly voice from Mario. That's a legitimately weird thing to think about. Pauline, the Mushroom Kingdom is free. You can go home. Post-credit scene. We see a round table with Garland and two other creatures. One, a fierce, three-headed dragon, and the other, a bulky humanoid boar-like creature caked in shadow. Their names? Tiamat and Ganon. Fiends. Bowser is gone. The fool stayed across dimensions for too long? Tiamat snarls. No, if that had happened, Chaos's powers would have disappeared. They went right back to me. Besides, I wouldn't need to call you two here if all that happened was Bowser dying like an idiot. I think there's a warrior of light out there. So in case you weren't aware, Garland is the main antagonist of Final Fantasy. He transforms into a god named Chaos at the end of the game, and he's the big bad of the first Captain NCU phase. I don't want to give away too many plot details before the Captain N crossover movie, but I will say that Bowser, Garland, Tiamat, and Ganon are a group called the Four Fiends, a name that comes directly from Final Fantasy. Garland is their leader, and the avatar of Chaos. Tiamat is from Final Fantasy, and Ganon is from Zelda. The fantasy kingdoms of Mario, Zelda, and Final Fantasy are here made part of the same world. Sometimes I'll merge plot details from different series a bit, which is both necessary to streamline things, and a good way of adding fan service, because these games from series untouched in 40 years would still have fans, I suppose. And that is the first of my 6 pitches. I expected to write like a paragraph or two, so I think this could quickly get out of hand. I'm approaching this a lot like a writing challenge, so I welcome criticism or solutions on how you'd handle plot details. You can probably come up with at least one thing that will make me think, well fuck, why didn't I think of that? Again, this is a silly idea, but coming up with concepts can be fun. With all that said, are you ready for a pitch that can show how disparate the cinematic universe can get? The next movie is a real massive shift in both tone and probably the age rating. The first Captain NCU horror film, Castlevania. Because a cinematic universe where every movie feels the same isn't fun. Constanta, a city on the Black Sea coast, 1691. We see the leader of a group of pirates, Grant Danasty, bartering with a merchant. The merchant has 2 horses and a whole caravan behind him. "You're pirates?" he asks. "Transylvania's a long way from the coast." "Once we get there, we won't need to be pirates anymore." Grant hands him a sack of gold. "This should be enough for your trouble." Grant addresses his crew. One asks, "That's a lot of money. You sure we'll be able to make back, Captain?" "Don't worry. Dracula's castle has got enough riches to pay every man here back tenfold." The crew stuffs themselves into a cramped wagon. Grant addresses a younger member of his crew who's staying behind. "If we're not back in a year, ship's yours. Do whatever you want, kid." We also see a mysterious stranger in a dark cloak in the carriage. "He's traveling with us," the merchant says. "Well, get comfortable. It's a bumpy ride." The caravan leaves town on a dark night as we get the title card, Castlevania. The movie is loosely based on Castlevania 3. The protagonists are the playable characters of that game: Trevor, Grant, Sypha, and Alucard. The stranger in that caravan was Sypha. Now, Simon Belmont was the Belmont in Captain N, and I will introduce him, but this won't quite be his movie. He's the descendant of Trevor Belmont, the main character of the movie. Castlevania 3 is set before Castlevania 1 and 2, which both feature Simon, and I thought it would be interesting to adapt it first, while still setting up Simon to appear in Captain N. I did shift the year this game takes place to the 1600s, which is when Castlevania 1 is set, cause I think it makes more sense as a time period for a Castlevania movie. Sometime in the 1980s, we cut to the Belmont Mansion in England. This is where we're introduced to a young Simon Belmont, maybe 8 or 9 years old. This is how Simon Belmont is going to be set up as a character. The movie's framing device is that his father, the Belmont before him, is telling the story of how the Belmonts became a monster hunting clan. One day he'll take their whip, the vampire killer, and become the next monster hunter. Throughout Trevor Belmont's narrative, we get cutaways to Simon hearing the story from his father. At first, Simon is young and terrified by this scary story, but as the cutaways go on, he's older and older, and by the final cutaway, he's ready to become the next monster hunter. To be clear, his father tells him the story multiple times. It's not like he just takes so long Simon ages 30 years throughout the course of the story. Also, this would be a really good time for me to name his father Christopher Belmont, but that character is from the Game Boy Castlevania game, so I can't use it. There are simply not enough Belmonts yet, so I'll just call him John Belmont or something. Yeah. We're introduced to Trevor scoping out a massive castle in the woods on a cliff above. Dracula's castle is imposing and elaborate from the outside. Trevor sees his target and smiles. He jumps down and walks triumphantly towards the main gate, the classic Belmont walk that starts these classic Castlevania games as he enters Dracula's castle. Now, I would want to include a lot of locations that are close recreations of how the castle looks in Castlevania 1 and 3, because it's just a lot of fun. The locations and set pieces are arguably the most iconic part of Castlevania. He walks through the entrance into the castle, finding it suspiciously empty. Once he's in the castle's main entrance, a flame appears next to his face, and he jumps back, brandishing his whip. We see the cloaked stranger put their staff down, and the flame goes away. "You're human. That cloak makes you look like a monster," Trevor says. We see more of the figure's face, but they don't lower their hood. "Judging by that cross on your whip, you're probably not here to serve Dracula." The two realize they're both here to kill Dracula, and figure they should stick together because of how big and dangerous the castle is. They hear some screams, and Trevor follows the sound of the noise. Sifa wants to look for Dracula because they don't care if the pirates live or die, but Trevor wants to destroy all monsters, so he goes to the screams anyways, and Sifa follows. Sifa is a little more utilitarian. They just want to make sure Dracula dies no matter what, while Trevor wants to kill all monsters and save everybody. To be clear, the vampire killer is a chain, not a rope. In the Castlevania games, you need to collect a power-up to turn the whip into a chain whip. But let's be real, 90% of the time, in gameplay, it's a chain. In the basement, a massive crowd of Castlevania skeletons are fighting Grant's pirates. There's about 15 of the pirates, and the skeletons have taken about 5. Trevor comes in and takes a bunch of skeletons out with his whip. Grant thanks him, but is frustrated at losing his crew. Grant and his pirates didn't realize there would be more monsters here. They didn't believe the legends of Dracula and thought the castle would have actually been abandoned. They're not about to let their crew die though. Replacing them is very inconvenient, and most members of the crew want to at least grab some treasure before they leave. The pirates make a tenuous alliance, realizing their chances of survival are stronger if they stay together. The party moves in the direction the skeletons left, in search of the monsters. So now is where I should describe our characters and the tone of the movie. Trevor is inexperienced, rash, and a little cocky. He's motivated primarily by revenge. Dracula killed his family, so he wants to destroy all monsters and prevent it from happening to anyone else. Sifa is a mage, and they're a little more reserved than Trevor. We later find out that Sifa is actually a witch. She disguised herself as a man for most of her life to avoid persecution. Eventually, her village found out her secret, and tasked her with destroying Dracula, the only way to prove that she doesn't serve him. Sifa's gender is ambiguous for now, and most characters, besides Trevor, assume her to be a man. This backstory for Sifa was actually in the original Castlevania 3, although this specific connection with Dracula is something I'm making up for the plot. She'd be from a village somewhere in Transylvania, with a lot of campaigns against witches, who are assumed to be working for Dracula. Then there's Grant. He doesn't care about Dracula or monsters, and is in it for the treasure. He also has a crew of pirates along with him, and they're here so they can be bodies. Yet the framing device of this movie means that we can get pretty bloody, and I want to have lots of character deaths. None of the characters besides Trevor technically need to live, so I will take the opportunity to have a lot of creative and wild kills, and it won't be known who lives or dies by the end of the movie. It won't be a full-on slasher, but Castlevania would definitely have slasher movie elements. The Castlevania games have never been about being actually scary. They're mostly about the gothic aesthetic, set pieces, and the appeal of fighting a bunch of spooky monsters. So, for an adaptation like this, I say playing up the gothic aesthetic and having a lot of scenes where monsters can just kill a bunch of people is the way to go. And it stays true to what Castlevania is. Even though this is based on Castlevania 3, most of the set pieces in the castle and monsters would be based on the first Castlevania. I just think that game has a very strong collection of bosses to adapt. Frankenstein's monster, Igor, mummies, Medusa, and Death would all be here as part of Dracula's army of monsters. Our very own Hugh Jackman Von Helsing. There would also be a hint of comedy in the movie, not as much of a comedy as Super Mario Bros., but some campiness for sure. The group creeps through the castle more and more. Just imagine the Simon Belmont cutaways would happen throughout the movie too. It would be a total pace breaker if I described them each time. Before we're really introduced to Dracula and his monsters, this opening section will establish lots of ambience and the feel of Dracula's castle as a location. The canonical name for the castle in Castlevania is Castlevania, and that is just silly enough for me to want to use it, but I don't know if it was established at this point in the franchise. Suddenly, a vampire flies in, grabbing one of these pirates. He flies off and is about to bite his neck, but throws him down in frustration. This is Alucard, not the hot, long-haired Alucard you know from Symphony of the Night. In Castlevania 3, Alucard was just another vampire like Dracula, only he was on your side. Sypha fights him, throwing magic, to which Alucard turns into a bat and fly away. Maybe we can see Sypha unmasking here, only to put the cloak back on. The crew keeps moving until Medusa shows up, along with 4 armored knights wielding swords. A fight begins. Grant is surprisingly competent at dividing all his men, but a few end up killed, or turned to stone by Medusa. Some are panicking and low on morale, but Grant tries to motivate them, showing a side to him we haven't seen before. I'm going to be keeping a running pirate count because I will be confused if I don't. I said they had about 15 men and 5 got captured, so we have 7 currently remaining. Cut to the 5 captured pirates, brought straight to Dracula's room for him to taste. He sucks the blood out of one of the pirates as the others scream and spits it out. Tastes like salt and fish. Our Dracula will be genuinely intimidating and evil, but has more of an over-the-top side than Dracula typically has in Castlevania media. He's not as much of a comedy villain as Bowser, but he'd still be the kind of villain to invite our heroes to a banquet and feed them to make their blood taste better. He calls for Alucard and tosses him the bud. This version of Alucard will be genuinely tormented by his father Dracula. As a vampire, he's bound to Dracula's castle, and he refuses to drink human blood no matter how much he's tempted to as a vampire. It would almost be portrayed as an addiction. Dracula calling his son into the room and tossing the thing he's trying to quit right in front of him is exactly the kind of dynamic these two are going to have. Dracula laughs. There's a pot roast in the walls around here somewhere, have it if you're hungry, but it won't taste good. Yes, that's a fucking stupid way to make a Castlevania reference, but I had to put it somewhere. Look, I spared you from a Your Princess is in Another Castle reference, so be happy. Igor would show up. He is Dracula's servant, so I suppose he'd also be half Igor, half Renfield. He informs Dracula that death has captured the rest of the intruders. The banquet can begin. The next scene is where we're fully introduced to Dracula's pantheon of monsters, as the party is forced to sit around a table to have a full meal, with all the foods that would presumably make their blood taste better. Dracula tells them to sit and to enjoy their last meal, confident that no one will try anything because his whole army of monsters surrounds him, with the exception of Death and Medusa. He introduces the party to Frankenstein's monster, Igor, and his son Alucard, who is seated right next to him. The pirates he captured are also seated, bringing the pirate count up to 10. From now on, it only goes down. Trevor and Sifa are full of rage, but they can't do anything. Nobody is eating except for one particular pirate who is really hungry and can't read the room. "Hey, isn't this garlic? What if it, kills you?" he asks Dracula. "It's the garlic flower that harms vampires, not the cloves," Alucard mutters. I have a friend who has told me that fact 3 times now. If you're watching, that was for you. Anyways, Sifa would be unmasked, and at one point there is, "She's a girl" twist. I know, it's a very 1991 trope, but as long as it's done respectfully, I think those kinds of explorations of gender can be effective. A lot of classic monsters like Dracula have historically had a lot of queer subtext to them. Sifa isn't technically trans, but the concept of a woman forced to live as a man can invoke that kind of storyline. Especially in the 1600s where that thing is going to get repressed. After being revealed as a girl, Sifa would start to feel more and more comfortable in the castle, and there would be almost an element of temptation to join the monster's side. That won't be the end of her storyline though, because I do not want the conclusion to her storyline being gay monsters bad. Grant would deduce that Alucard could be a potential ally, and would see Trevor with his finger over his pouch, seemingly hiding some sort of weapon. Grant would look over at Alucard, then to Trevor and Sifa, then towards the chandelier, the four making an impromptu plan on the spot. Suddenly, Grant jumps up and throws an axe towards the chandelier, knocking it down onto Dracula's army. Trevor would throw a vial of holy water at Dracula, burning his face for a moment, and Sifa's flames would allow them the chance to run away. The group attempt to escape in the opposite direction as Frankenstein's monster, and Igor blocks their passage. Grant motions for everyone to run as he and Alucard fight the two monsters. Some parts are gonna die here, so let's drop their number to 6. Grant would kill Igor and have a gnarly knife fight with Frankenstein's monster. The creature would lumber around, sustaining cuts and leaking blood and pus. Eventually the creature falls, causing the floor to crumble and making every protagonist but Grant fall to the ground. As you can probably tell by the focus I'm giving to him, Grant is dying here. Frankenstein's monster chokes him to death and falls himself, having lost too many guts and organs. I actually kinda grew to like Grant there. Sorry, he was getting a little too competent for a horror movie. He had to die. Alucard, Sifa, and Trevor would fall to an underground cave section of the castle, leaving Dracula to send his twin mummies after them. Some of the pirates are alive, but separated. Admittedly, I don't know what their purpose would be anymore, but we could have scenes throughout the movie where the monsters kill them in their own gruesome ways. Maybe they could try to help out the protagonists a bit, or just be interested in treasure. At this point, Alucard would explain how he's bound to the castle, his father is evil, and he wanted to oppose him but couldn't leave. Alucard would be sort of like a mentor. He'd teach Trevor and Sifa about the monsters they're up against, and would help them since they're both a little inexperienced, while also fighting his urge to drink human blood. There is still an element of horror here, as Alucard can't fully be trusted all the time. At some point, Alucard explains Dracula's backstory, so I might as well say it now. Dracula was a noble in the 15th century, who saw countless friends and family slaughtered in wars and uprisings. He became a sorcerer, with the ultimate goal of obtaining immortality. Eventually, he summoned a demon from another world, Chaos. Chaos is the source of most monsters from across the world, and he's connected to Garland, and comes from the same world as Bowser, but Alucard doesn't know that part. Chaos made a deal with Dracula. He'd achieve immortality and just a small fraction of Chaos's power, which would make him 1,000 times more powerful than any mortal. He would be bound to Dracula's castle though. It's our understanding that Chaos's power is bound to locations, which is why Bowser lost his powers after going to Earth in Super Mario Bros. Randomly shifting over to talking about Mario never gets old. Dracula was given command of monsters, who also became bound to the castle, and Alucard was forced to turn into a vampire alongside his father. In exchange, Dracula would do one thing for Chaos: go to England and slaughter every Belmont. Clearly he missed one. Sorry if that was a little convoluted, but that's broadly how Castlevania is connected to the rest of the Captain NCU. While Super Mario Bros. Introduced Garland, this is our setup for Chaos, the source of his power. You can still skip other movies and have a basic understanding of Captain N the Final Fantasy, which should be good for a cinematic universe. Also, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, which came out nearly 15 years after Castlevania and is definitely not eligible for the Captain NCU, did establish that Dracula's powers come from a demon named Chaos. I can assure you, it is purely a coincidence. Chaos is a popular name for ancient gods that give people power. The rest of Act 2 has the gang navigating caves underneath Dracula's castle, fighting fish people, and trying to make their way back to Drac. Dracula is very determined to look for Trevor because of his agreement to destroy the Belmonts. There's a legend of the Warriors of Light, 4 warriors who will rise to oppose Chaos. One of them was supposedly a Belmont. We'd also get a look at the rest of the pirates dying in gruesome ways to keep tension up. Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard would warm up to each other, and before leaving the caves, they'd fight the twin mummies, along with a revived Frankenstein's monster. At the end of the fight, Frankenstein's body is lost in the water, and both mummies are taken down. Sypha burns one of the mummies to death, and Trevor is forced to use another vial of holy water to defeat the other. Holy water is very powerful against monsters, but Trevor has a limited supply, and now he only has 2 vials left. The section would also involve lots of needing to navigate and do some cave exploring, because it keeps the plot more interesting and not just fighting monsters. Back at the castle, the 3 climb a set of stairs, fighting off an army, and they face Dracula himself, with Medusa by his side. There is an intense battle, with Sypha handling Medusa, and the others handling Dracula. Medusa would be knocked out of the castle, leaving her fate ambiguous. Trevor would rely on holy water as a crutch, just like anyone playing Castlevania 3, but Dracula dodges the 3rd vial. Alucard would take the 4th and final one, and run up to Dracula, attempting to sacrifice himself like Grant did. Because Alucard is a creature of darkness, he will always be tempted towards evil. At least that's how he sees it. The vampires are both alive, but on the metaphorical death's door, because the actual death appears, killing Alucard with his scythe. He laughs and disappears, as Trevor seemingly finishes Dracula with his only other bit of vampire-killing paraphernalia, garlic flowers. As we all know, Dracula has a second form though, a beast, which is the embodiment of his curse. It flies up to the very top of his tower. I'm a believer that with franchise films, or any films with a recognizable IP, you shouldn't always listen to what fans want, but you should show them what someone would naturally want from the premise to make the audience feel satisfied. In Castlevania's case, this includes a journey up a clock tower to face Dracula. Trevor and Sypha make a long and arduous climb and face Dracula's beast form. The fight is long, but the two are victorious, and Trevor defeats Dracula with his whip. Neither Trevor nor Sypha die because they need to, carry on the Belmont clan. Trevor is the only one who fully accepts Sypha for who she really is, and it causes the two to fall in love with each other. Dracula curses Trevor Belmont with his dying breath, and Trevor declares that if Dracula ever returns, even if he isn't there to strike him down, his future children will be. As the morning light hits Transylvania, Trevor and Sypha leave Dracula's castle and escape the perilous crumbling building. We see a final shot of one monster who has seemingly survived, Death, as the two leave to be together. The movie ends with one final look at Simon in England. He's about 20 and is hearing the story for the final time from his father. His father explains that because he's of age, he can now receive the Vampire Killer Whip and become the next vampire hunter of the Belmont clan. Simon swears to fight for the forces of good as the movie ends with him taking the whip. Not to toot my own horn here, but I think my Castlevania pitch is exemplary of some of the strengths of the cinematic universe model. Not saying this would be a good movie, I hope it would be, but this is very rough. Castlevania is a very different tone from anything else I'm planning for the universe, and it is separated from every other movie by time, but is still able to set up one of the main characters. Once I introduce Simon, I can keep him in a lighter tone than this movie. Let's get to the post and mid-credit scene. We cut to an unnamed island off the coast of Greece. Inside, we see Simon Belmont, now about the age of 30, talking to a village elder. "You're a monster hunter, I understand," he asks warily. "The best," Simon gleams. I'm afraid we need your services." She's returned. "The god of darkness, Medusa." Simon Belmont will return in Kid Icarus, not taking questions. Post-credit scene brings us back to the ruins of Dracula's castle. Trevor and Sifa mark graves for Alucard and Grant, and after paying their respects, they decide to go to England to live out their lives together. Trevor trips on a piece of rubble and finds a fully intact pot roast underneath it. He takes it with him. So that's Castlevania. Now tell me, what's the most different type of movie you could possibly imagine from what I just described? Mega Man has got to be close, right? In the 80s, many video games were basically playable takes on genres. Castlevania had a bunch of horror tropes, Final Fantasy was basically a digital D&D campaign, and Mega Man was very inspired by retro sci-fi and Astro Boy in particular. So I want to lean into those inspirations for the Mega Man movie. Mega Man would basically be portrayed as a superhero, and the movie would be bright and pulpy, but it would also deal with the societal and political implications of robots used for war. Pacifism has always been an undertone of Mega Man I'd like to explore. If I had to compare my movie to anything out there, I'd say it would be the James Gunn Superman movie. It's hopeful. Mega Man is a savior of humanity against Dr. Wily and his robots, but it also does deal with what a world where these robot conflicts happen would actually look like. The movie begins in Tokyo, 1980s. We see a scientific conference being held by the world's two leading robot scientists, Dr. Thomas Light and Dr. Albert Wily. The two are good friends and work closely together. Japan is the only country where nuclear weapons have been used against human populations, Light explains. And now, with the threat of another nuclear catastrophe on the horizon, humanity needs defensive tools more than ever. We present Project Rock and Roll. He unveils blueprints of robot designs, the 6 robot masters from the original Mega Man: Gutsman, Iceman, Fireman, Elecman, Bombman, and Cutman. Dr. Wily takes over to explain their potential usages for military conflicts. While Light was careful to explain that they should only be used for defense, Wily plays up their potential for conflicts, to which the crowd, made up mostly of investors, is more into. Even gets a few laughs out of them at one point. Light takes over once Wily is finished, explaining each robot master. The final stage of Project Rock and Roll is Mega Man. Mega Man is equipped with a plasma-based Mega Buster and quick reflexes, which can discern enemy targets and prioritize civilian safety. But Mega Man's main draw is the ability to copy any machine. Once Mega Man learns and grows, his potential as a tool for defense could be limitless. The crowd is now fully invested in what Light is saying. Now, while it depends on the funding we receive, the project is estimated to take... Dr. Wily looks at Light, shaking his head, trying to get him to stop what he's about to say. 10 years at the soonest to fully complete. I really like the concept of Light and Wily being former friends, which helps the political angle of the movie and connects us to the villain. It works within the recurring theme of confronting your past as well. I'm allowed to use content from the first 4 Mega Man games. Even though Mega Man 2 is easily the more iconic Mega Man game, I think Mega Man 1 has better robot masters, which is why I adapted them instead. 6 robot masters also lets me flesh them out a little more. Also, Project Rock and Roll does technically reference the Japanese version of the game with Mega Man's name, but we're in Japan. I think a small reference to the Famicom version of the game doesn't break my rules too much. Let's finish the scene. Dr. Wily is frustrated as the two leave. No one wants to invest in their robots. The two argue, with Light asserting the need to be ethical and honest, and Wily asserting the need for people to actually give them money. The two are friends, but are clearly divided on many issues. Light makes one thing clear: if their robots are going to be used as war machines, he doesn't want to be part of the project. We cut to a news report in the modern day, showing the footage of Bowser rampaging through New York from the climax of Super Mario Bros. After the events in New York City 2 months ago, where two heroic plumbers and their son saved the day, monster attacks have only risen in frequency throughout the world. While nobody has been killed by the attacks, their frequency has overwhelmed local militaries, and experts say it's only a matter of time before something drastic may happen. We have an exclusive interview with one such expert, but first, a special report on the currently developing Outer Heaven incident in South Africa. The same spot in Tokyo, where Light and Wily gave their speech, is under attack from a giant golem in the present day. It's the golem enemy from Dragon Quest, but big enough to rampage through Tokyo. I'm okay with that, oh wow, I know what that thing is type of referencing, as long as it's actually relevant to the plot. In this case, there needed to be a monster rampaging through Tokyo, so I made it a Dragon Quest monster. Well, I have to call it Dragon Warrior. And Dragon Warrior is presumably still more popular in Japan. Mega Man arrived to save the day. Mega Man runs up to the monster as he communicates with Light and Roll, who are waiting nearby in the jet. Mega Man shoots the golem with his arm blaster, and defeats it after a short action sequence. He waves to the crowd and smiles, before hopping on the jet to go back home. Mega Man is characterized as being a little overconfident and rash, but he's young and is genuinely hopeful and optimistic. Roll congratulates him. She basically acts as reconnaissance for the mission, looking out for civilians in danger and guiding Mega Man. Dr. Light is proud too, but a little more subdued. He's Mega Man's father figure, and seems a little worried about Mega Man being a super fighting robot. They fly back to Dr. Light's lab in San Francisco, and we get some time as the family lives together. Light immediately checks up with Mega Man to make sure he wasn't damaged. Roll is very energetic and smart, since her role is to help Mega Man on his missions. Despite Dr. Light's anxieties, the three get along well. Light goes to sleep and the robots power down for the day. The next morning, we see the three living their mundane lives a little. Light is reading the newspaper, he's seemingly retired or not working on any scientific projects currently, while Roll sweeps up around the house. Eventually, the three go to a park, which gives us a picture of their peaceful life. Mega Man and Roll are disguised, which clearly shows that the broader populace don't know their identities. If I was allowed to use Mega Man Soccer, I would make them play soccer. Roll gets a call on her watch that there's a threat somewhere in South Africa, so the three run back to the jet and leave straight away. We cut to a laboratory somewhere in Russia, to Dr. Wily. He's surrounded by some of the robot masters, and we find out that he's gotten funding from a group of Russian oligarchs who he's talking to right now. He also has an assistant, Dr. Cossack, who helped him out by building the robots. Wily speaks up. I thank you for your funding and all your help with my projects, gentlemen. Nobody will be able to resist our power now that the robot masters are out there. Soon we will be very rich men indeed. South Africa. Another golem is rampaging through a town as the jet lands. This time the golem is much stronger. Mega Man struggles against the beast, and just when it seems like it's about to harm innocents, Fireman shows up, defeating it effortlessly. Fireman is a confident show-off. Dr. Light panics and explains who he is to Mega Man, and Mega Man pulls out his Mega Buster in preparation to fight. Flame Man tries to get him to join Dr. Wily, but Mega Man refuses, so the two fight. Mega Man struggles, while Light tells him to use his scan feature. Mega Man is able to copy Fireman's fire and match him evenly, so Fireman flees to a jungle. Mega Man hasn't had to use the copy ability before, since he's only been fighting monsters. Before Fireman left, he leaves behind a card disclosing the location of Dr. Wily's lab. Mega Man and Roll immediately want to go, but Dr. Light refuses. He explains that before the two parted ways, Wily stole the plans for his 6 robot masters. He doesn't know why, but Wily has decided to finally put them into action. Light wants to confront Wily, but he claims it would be too dangerous for Mega Man to come with them. The Robot Master's powers, combined, far surpasses his own. Light must confront Wily himself. Fireman dashes through the forest and meets with Iceman and Bombman by a military encampment. They talk to an American soldier who explains that a soldier named Big Boss defected from their country and has declared a sovereign nation in South Africa, Outer Heaven. The US government wants to start military action against them, but they know that they can't attack unprovoked. So this is where the Robot Masters come in. The soldiers flee as their robots use their powers to destroy the encampment. They performed a false flag attack, so that now military action can be justified. To be clear, I am not planning on setting up a Metal Gear movie or introducing Snake to the universe. This is just a world building detail that makes sense and happens to reference another NES series. I am deliberately making it open though, so that way maybe it can be expanded on in the future in the slim chance I may use it. Back at the lab, Light is about to depart while Roll tells him to watch the news. First robot used in human combat is what the headline says. Shocked, Light and Mega Man watch the news reports. Robots designed by renowned scientist Dr. Thomas Light were supposedly used in the attack in Outer Heaven today. We've spoken to his former partner Dr. Wily to give insight in the developing story. Thomas Light's usage of robots against American soldiers is nothing short of treasonous, Wily exclaims. These robots, Fireman, Iceman, Bombman, and Mega Man, were supposed to stand for peace and defense of humanity. Mega Man, Light, and Roll look around in desperation as the news report shows interviews with the public, disappointed that their hero would do such a thing. The three see a mob amassing outside the lab, and Light realizes it would be dangerous if the two robots stay behind, so they depart to Wily's laboratory together. To be clear, this is a random laboratory in Siberia. It is not the iconic Skull Fortress. That comes later. Roll remarks that it's probably going to be a trap, but they land anyways. They're a little out of options. Mega Man fights some generic robots, basically the enemies from the game, who come to attack, as Wily emerges. His robot masters, the three who didn't go to South Africa, point weapons at Mega Man, and Mega Man is about to fight back until Light stops him. Wily captures the three and leads them to his base. Wily is overconfident, showing them everything he's accomplished. He explains how the recent monster attacks have given him the justification to finally put his project to fruition, and that he's been able to amass a fortune from Russian funding. He takes them to a central room where the oligarchs and Dr. Cossack are amassed. "You were supposed to help humanity," Dr. Light says. Wily scowls. "Take them away." Gutsman appears and leads Light and Roll to a prison, while Mega Man stays behind. Mega Man, the savior of humanity, Wily says. "How long do you really think that can go on? You're the strongest thing Dr. Light has ever built. With your copy powers, if you keep fighting like this, you'll become more dangerous than you can possibly imagine. Even if humanity forgives you now, they'll never accept you fully. Can humanity really love a nuclear bomb?" "It doesn't matter if I'm dangerous," Mega Man shouts. "Humans need someone to protect them. They need to be shown that we can handle anything together. You only care about the money. How are you helping anyone?" Wily looks over at Elec Man, standing to the side, and nods. Elec Man shoots a beam at the Russian oligarchs, and they all fall over dead. Mega Man and Cossack are completely surprised as Wily continues. They serve their purpose. "Look, Mega Man, this was never about the profit. These monster attacks have just made humanity's inadequacies even clearer to me. People need robots to govern them, and make their difficult decisions. I will bring us to a new age ruled by fear. I can reprogram you. Either you join me or I make you join me. I can't let your strength go to waste." The dialogue will probably be more subtle if I made this an actual script. Mega Man breaks free and attempts to break Light and Roll out of their jail cell. It's made out of a special alloy, unbreakable by robots, so Light tells Mega Man to flee on his own. There's an escape sequence where Mega Man runs outside the laboratory. using his Mega Buster to break small robots. He's surrounded by 3 robot masters who are here: Gutsman, Cutman, and Elecman. Mega Man doesn't want to have to scrap them, seeing them as his brothers, but they fight him anyway. After taking some damage, he starts using flames, which give him more of an advantage, and he's able to copy Gutsman, which gives him super strength. Eventually, he destroys Gutsman. The other robots are surprised for a moment, and it seems to weigh heavily on Mega Man, but he can't wait any longer, so he breaks out of the facility and runs to the jet. Suddenly, Dr. Cossack is also seen running out of the facility. He explains how he was the leading robot scientist in Russia before being forced to work for Dr. Wily, who had kidnapped his daughter. It was actually him who put Wily's robots to fruition by creating the Robot Masters. He knows that he couldn't keep working with Wily after seeing him kill the Russian oligarchs. Seeing Mega Man fight despite his family being kidnapped inspired him to break free. Mega Man would soon realize how he had a positive impact on Cossack, which would help him deal with his fears about becoming too dangerous. Mega Man's character arc in this movie is about reckoning with the world becoming more complicated than he realized, and the fact that his powers are going to become increasingly dangerous as he goes on. Realizing he needs to stick to his principles throughout and remain the defender of humanity. The two don't know where to go or what to do, but they're being chased by the robots, so they fly away in the jet. Back in Dr. Wily's prison, we see Kalinka Cossack, the daughter of Dr. Cossack, who is imprisoned alongside Light and Roll. She explains the situation to them as Wily's laboratory rises out of the sky. It flies somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, where it lowers onto a massive fortress on an island with a huge skull on front. Cossack and Mega Man fly to Dr. Light's lab. The protests have died down. There can be a funny moment where Cossack nerds out about all the tech Light has built. Mega Man wonders about what to do now, and Cossack explains Wily's laboratory is equipped with the ability to fly, and Wily would have probably just moved by now. A big flying lair. I feel real stupid for joining up with him now. Just pretend he has a Russian accent. Is this a scanner of some kind? Cossack asks. He's pointing at a monitor of a grid map of the world. There's 4 red glowing dots at various points on the map. Yeah, we use it to tell when there's monsters on the loose, Mega Man says before he realizes what they mean. We need to go now. As the two head off, Wily's face is on the news again. Thankfully, I managed to reprogram Dr. Thomas Light's rogue robots. Miraculously, they're working for me and the betterment of humanity. However, one robot eluded my grasp. Mega Man. This is the classic go fight the Robot Masters moment, with 4 Robot Masters instead of 6. The 4 Robot Masters are fighting monsters throughout the world: Iceman, Cutman, Bombman, and Fireman. They're pretty reckless. The civilians are running and cowering in fear, and the Robot Masters don't seem to be helping. Mega Man appears where Iceman is located and a battle ensues. At first the civilians are scared of him, but we see him deliberately avoiding and even rescuing civilians from the debris. He defeats Iceman and absorbs his power. The civilians just stand around in a crowd afterwards, not sure what to think. He smiles and waves and gets back in the jet. Through a montage, we see Mega Man fighting Cutman and Bombman in random places throughout the world. In the montage, we also see Cossack trying to trace the signal of Dr. Wily's broadcasts to find out where he's located. We also see the 3, Kalinka, Light, and Roll, in jail to remind us they do exist. By the end of his fights, the crowd is fully cheering for Mega Man. The world at large still hates him, but he's at least got some people rooting for him. Cossack is also able to pinpoint Wily's location, but still needs about half an hour to find the precise coordinates, as Mega Man prepares a rematch against Fireman in South Africa. Mega Man beats Fireman pretty bad with his fancy new powers, except Fireman is able to use his fire to fly away. He seemingly scanned Mega Man through some technology we don't know. Because of the monster attack, the conflict in Outer Heaven has calmed down. Mega Man hangs out a bit until they're ready. Cossack needs some time to pinpoint the location of Dr. Wily's lab. And they fly to Skull Fortress. Mega Man bursts through the front gate, blasting robots and looking for Wily. At one point he defeats Fireman for real. and he's followed by Cossack on the lookout for prisoners. Mega Man enters a large room without any other doors in sight, where a giant mech comes crashing down, piloted by Wily. The two fight. The entire room is crumbling, and the action sequence is interspersed with our three prisoners who are broken free when the laboratory starts to crumble around them. Elec Man was guarding them, so they redirect his electricity and defeat him. The whole thing can be Roll's idea because I need more things for Roll to do. Meanwhile, Mega Man destroys the robot and Wily falls out, pleading for his life in the classic way Dr. Wily does. As this happens, the rest of the gang meet with Mega Man. Kalinka and Cossack reunite, while Mega Man explains what happened while they were in prison. Light is worried at first, but is proud of Mega Man for being able to handle it. Mega Man is worried he's too dangerous, but Light reassures him that no matter what happens, he's still a good person, with humanity's interest at heart. Wily gets up, and out of anger, he calls out Mega Man for protecting humans, who he sees as pathetic and deserving of subjugation. Roll will record this, so she can reveal Wily as a fraud later on. I know it's a cliche plot point, but I think it's a trope for a reason. For a villain who spends his time manipulating the world, it makes sense as a way for his lies to get exposed. Suddenly, Wily steps back and presses some kind of button. Mega Man fights, copy Mega Man. Wily was able to replicate the technology that allows Mega Man to copy things, and when Fireman scanned Mega Man, he used it to create a clone. The Mega Man clone is even more destructive than Mega Man, using all of his abilities recklessly, to the point that the fortress is being destroyed. Everyone flees while Mega Man fights this dark reflection of himself. Mega Man is more careful than Mega Man though, even though Mega Man uses more raw destructive power, so Mega Man triumphs over Mega Man in the end. The gang flies away with their prisoner Wily in tow. Back at the lab, Mega Man hands over Wily to the police officers, who vows revenge, while Dr. Cossack is conveniently not in frame. A huge crowd forms around Mega Man, now cheering him on. He smiles and greets the crowd, along with Light and Roll as we fade to black. The movie ends with the five at a dinner table, all one big family, including Kalinka and Dr. Cossack. Cossack reveals that he's trying to get a work visa with the US government. Luckily, they will probably accept it because it would mean taking Russia's best scientist away, and this new field of robotics technology being on their side would be useful. Unrealistic, optimistic view in the current political climate, but it's a Mega Man movie. I think it's a little excusable. A siren sounds, signaling a monster attack, so the group prepares, setting off in the jet, so humanity's defenders can defend once again. That is Mega Man doesn't set up Garland or Chaos, but it does have a few broader lore implications. Mega Man gives us more of a picture of how the world operates, and gets changed by increasing casual monster attacks. The presence of robots also gives this world more of a sci-fi leaning. It is the first time I bring in a bunch of references to other unrelated NES series too, which is something I'm not opposed to doing more in the future. You get connections to Metal Gear, Dragon Warrior, and probably a few others in forms of monsters that I haven't figured out yet. I don't want the monsters to be too crazy or strong because it would probably overshadow the actual Mega Man stuff. Even though the robot masters are from Mega Man 1, I also took inspiration from Mega Man 4, which is just barely eligible since it came out in 1991. Specifically the Cossacks, and that game had Mega Man traveling the world to fight robot masters as well. I made the joke about James Gunn's Superman. You can probably tell I really like that movie. There are some points of inspiration, and plot details that are pretty similar, such as Dr. Wily manipulating the protagonist's public perception, the general air of hope, and a battle against a clone in the finale. I think it's different enough in the context of this pitch that it's not like plagiarism or anything. Wily swears revenge, which leaves him open to appear in future movies. I don't have plans for him or anything, but he'd have to be in Mega Man 2 if that happens in a future phase. Considering how iconic Mega Man 2 the game is, that movie would 100% have to just be called Mega Man 2. The other movies have antagonists who are left open to future appearances too. Bowser and Death, although I at least have a plan for them. The next movie is Kid Icarus, where Simon Belmont appears, and that will be in my next video. Let's end with the mid-credits and post-credits scenes. Cossack has his work visa now. Mega Man enters with a robotic companion beside him, Rush the dog, who is built by both scientists shortly after the events of the movie. Rush acts like any dog, running towards the scientists and licking their face as they try to work. The scientists, though, have come to a realization after studying the patterns of monster attacks and their DNA. Dr. Light explains to Mega Man, somewhere out there is some kind of alternate dimension. That's where these monsters have been coming from. I don't know why or what's going on, but the barrier between our world and theirs is getting thinner. Post-credit scene. Funny one, no lore implications. Maybe some lore implications, but it's mostly a funny one. It's a news report done by the same reporter we saw earlier on in the film. With the recent revelations of Dr. Wily's motives, a lot of people have been left scared and confused. We've interviewed the saviors of New York City from 3 months ago, the Mario family. Hello Mario, Luigi, Pauline, and Kevin. The news report changes to the Mario standing in front of their home with their fanciest dress, which is probably not very fancy. Toad is there too. He went unacknowledged by the news reporter. After an awkward pause, they all say, "Hello. Do you trust Dr. Wily?" "Aw, don't get me started on that guy," Mario exclaims. He takes the microphone and starts walking up to the camera. "You know what this is? All of this is anti-Italian discrimination." Okay, cut the camera, The movie ends as the Marios get blacklisted from television due to Mario's poor decorum. And that is the first half of Phase 1 done. I'd love to hear any criticisms or changes you'd have of my pitches or expectations you'd have for the Kid Icarus, Legend of Zelda, and Captain N movies. I promise I will not steal any plot points from your suggestions. I have most of them like halfway planned out, some of the Kid Icarus script written. I can't promise the next pitches will be as detailed, at least the Kid Icarus and Legend of Zelda ones, since I will have a lot to get through with my big crossover movie. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.